If I were to say, when will I feel someone has reached out to understand? Now I'm keeping this, we discussed some time back that our idea is to create that universal vocabulary around a simple understanding of these behaviors, not linked to a role or a function or a department, but any average employee in an average way, in a daily conduct, how does he display behaviors that add up to a bigger set called reaching out to understand, let's say. So here are things I expect. First thing is, every employee in the company has a set of stakeholders. First of all, knowing who are my stakeholders, whom do my work, my contributions, what is expected of me, who does it impact? Who is dependent on me? Whom am I dependent on? What is the interconnected world in which I live? A person who doesn't even have clarity on that cannot even show the behavior of reaching out to understand. So everyone, so the next behavior is identify, acknowledge, and engage with your stakeholders. This is the first behavior. They identify, acknowledge, and engage. So all the three stages. First, who is it? Then let that person know that you are acknowledging him as a stakeholder, and then engage with that stakeholder. Then have a periodic conversation with the stakeholder to understand how you are helping him, how he is helping you. This is the next behavior. So there should be, it should not be sporadic, it should not be ad hoc, it should not be unpredictable, one time very high, one time very low, but a very periodic thing, which is almost a natural expectation that, well, this guy, will show up and ask me, how is he doing? Am I contributing to him? Is he contributing to me? This is the second thing too. So that is the periodic reaching out is a certain proactive behavior.
Which is also harmonious and natural if you...
Not in the setting up an agenda and calling a meeting,
Sure.
but finding formal, informal opportunities to go and seek what people want you to do for them. That behavior. So if the way to measure is that if you ask somebody, did he ever even ask you what you expect from him? And that question, there's no implicit, there is a desire to make the work contract literally explicit. To say, I contribute this to you, I can do this for you, am I doing this? So that's the first periodic. Then and proactive, in the sense that you don't wait for somebody to call you. You go, after identifying your stakeholders, you go periodically to them and check what can you do for them and what help you need from them. Having done that, no one feels that you have to, and this is the trick, you understanding is not equal to agreeing. Okay? Understanding is understanding the other person's perspective. So, reach out to understand should not burden you with a fear that if you reach out, you should agree with whatever the other person says. That burden, by the way, actually delays or denies that, dilutes that urgency of going to people for fear that they will ask you things which you cannot do. So, if you understand how to behave this way, you must understand that it is okay for you to go. Understand in the sense, what is understanding? Listening carefully, asking clarifying questions, time to time paraphrasing, summarizing, and checking back whether you have understood the way the person has expected it to be understood. Finally, communicating what you agree and what you don't agree and what will you do about what you have understood. This is the total loop of understanding. What people do is they do only parts of it. Either they acknowledge so much the other person gets a feeling that he has agreed, or they don't paraphrase, therefore the other person, some of the important messages is conveyed is not even registered on this person. And third is, they do both very well, but they don't even let him know what will they do with what they have understood. So,
Okay, so can you give us an example of this bit where you reached out, you've understood, you eventually disagreed, and you've convinced the other person, okay, that why the disagreement was important or why the disagreement was actually the better thing to do?
oh, there are so many examples. So what happens is, so look at what happened in the last 1 hour between us. Okay? There were many options before me. You came. Actually, I had even bigger context than all of you have, obviously, about what we are doing. Isn't it? I could have started talking to you almost in the manner of dictating a few sentences around what is meant by reaching out to understand what are brand behaviors. But if you notice, I did nothing like that. I sought actually to understand from you, what do you understand about the work? That was my first question. Then I wanted to understand through various type of clarifying questions, what are your expectations from me? Then I tried to understand from her whether that fits into the plan we have. Then I tried to tell you my understanding of what the plan should be. Then I tried to summarize that this could have been various plans, that we could do a role-based thing, we could do this, we could do education, we could do assessment, we could do various things, but we are doing a general thing. We came to a conclusion. I communicated that conclusion, agreed with that, and I said, now I will come back and do something about it. I'll give you time at 6 o'clock and I'll actually explain each behavior to you. If we agree now that this is the purpose for which we will use it. All this happened. In somebody else's hand, it may not have happened with the same completion and sense of completion and anticipation, predictability, reliability. You will go back, hopefully, from this experience that here is a man who seeks to understand what we want to do, who adds his own perspective to it, who acknowledges our perspective, who summarizes that, who then creates a common understanding, agrees to an action, delivers that action. All that happened.
Great.
Now, this is a better example than some example which is hypothetical. Therefore, I'm just giving this example right now. How many of us do that kind of closing loop naturally? So let me step back for a minute. Identify, acknowledge, and engage with stakeholders. Listen, clarify, paraphrase, summarize, and communicate your agreement with parts of what you have heard.
Or disagreement, as the case may be.
As the case may be. Articulate your early thoughts on what will you do with what you have understood.
But does reaching out to understand necessarily have to do with an immediate problem? Is
Yes.
there an
Nobody will-
immediate action to be taken? If you're only identifying and engaging, there may not necessarily be something to act upon at that stage.
I know that is a philosophical question, but I'll tell you, in the day-to-day world of work, nobody wants you to understand,
Things that he will need 4 years later.
and also for the reason of only understanding.
Okay.
The meaning of understanding is incomplete if it is not followed through action.
Okay.
What is the point? He understands everything I say, but he does nothing about it. Then I will not consider him as understanding. It is the work-day world, you know. Now, by the way, if you go to a religious guru or a confession priest in the church, he may not have to do this. He will only understand. He doesn't do anything else. My child, I understand you are suffering from guilt. This is what he says. But he doesn't have to say anything in return for this, you know. We are in a transactional world. Understanding here is not an unending act of, you know, building human bonding.
Or empathy.
It is a very transactional act of closing the loop with action. You will think I understand you only if I do something about what I understand of you. Okay, so this is why the loop closing is the most important thing.
Right.
So I want you to do something about it.
Right.
Have a periodicity to that relationship such that there is a predictability to it, there is a verifiability to it, there is a checkpoint to it, and there is an expectation around it. That is another way of building the seeking to understand behavior as a way of life. If you do it sporadically, it will not be a way of life.
Another thing, Chandra, you were mentioning last time is also understanding what the other partner hasn't been able to express, knowing more than they.
That's a very high level thing. Yeah. That's the, if you can manage, I mean, that will be almost giving you 5 out of 5, which is understanding beyond what is said through the sensitivity to body language, mood, non-verbal clues. Mm, Sometimes people say more than what they mean, less than what they mean, say them indirectly, expect you to catch, understand, read between the lines, fill in the blanks, all kinds of things happen. So that is an additional ability, but that is the ability of almost an expert.
Okay.
It is not that's all, it takes quite a bit of but you can add that, you can in fact say it in that language, that if you are really a very advanced practitioner of the behavior of reaching out to understand,
This is where you can reach.
this is where you can reach, that you can understand.
Maybe a
even-
mind reader almost.
You can understand even what is not said. Because people can't say many things, but they expect you to understand. This is what you experience in the best of spousal relationship. No?
Reach out to understand maybe.
I mean, when they reach out, I did. Maybe I have a different experience. But when I reach out to understand, I can understand without being spoken to. And so is just my wife. We almost understand each other's non-verbal language. Of course, it has taken us several years. Not that at your ages I could do that, but that has been the journey. And that's why I said the best of spousal relationship is of that nature.
Sorry, maybe it's a very stupid question, but I would like to ask this because, sometimes let's put it in a very layman's point of view. This one, right? I mean, you go to a shop and you're asking for a price of an item, and or a salesman, he's telling you something. Maybe it's in the sense that he doesn't want to service you at that moment or something like that, and without him telling you this, you get it, right? Or put it in a different way. You're telling somebody that you don't want to give this much of money to someone, but you phrase it in a different way so that the other person gets the message without you actually telling him in this, right? So while on one end you feel that okay, this is an expert task to achieve, there are occurrences where you kind of go through this in a
How
very-
intuitive do you need the person to
I'll
be?
tell
Yeah.
you what is interesting. Why you are able to do it intuitively at that time is that the onus of understanding is on you.
Mhm.
You have gone there with your need to understand the price.
Mhm.
If you did not understand or expecting a service level, and if you did not get it, then you have this urgent need to clarify it to yourself. That increases your radar, your sensitivity to the catching of the non-verbal clues or reading between the lines, whatever you just said. If you did not have that need, imagine it was the need of the other individual to tell you what price you should expect or to sell that goods to you. And you had just gone there as a passive player, willing to buy but provided
You
clarified.
get all the information.
Then you will not use those sensory apparatus which tells you about the non-verbal behavior.
Yeah.
You get the point. My focus is that you guys go back and write the book. So I must be sure that you guys understand it. I am focusing my attention on your non-verbal clues. I'm almost ignoring her. Well, I think she's just right now just a ceremonial player in this. Partly to learn, partly to just be there. So I'm not paying attention to her. So her non-verbal clues I don't even know right now. But I know you. I know almost who's listening, who's fiddling with that, and what is happening. All that I am noticing, So this is it happens. We all do it, but we do it on a purpose. I'm just saying, can you see a similar purpose in the? Give me a moment.
Not even done with one.
No, push on the second one. First one is over.
I just did
Right.
that, by the way. This is one of my key customers, and he's not somebody who's very reaching out to me. But I thought it's good to go just tell him, and I just told him, no, you didn't even speak to me. So, anyway, coming
sir.
back, I have to
Coming
move
to
on
the
to the
second
other
one.
ones. Yeah.
Right, sir.
Be the first to act and fastest to respond. Now, one of the interesting templates you can follow to make behaviors very explicit and easy to understand is a format called do's and don'ts. Okay, by the way, everything I said can be converted into a do's and don'ts, and some things are done and some things should not be done. When I read the second one, because of the sheer obviousness of that statement, I believe that decoding that into further several behaviors is not that easy unless we take a do and don't.
This is the toughest one. Everybody is just saying.
It's not tough at all. So
No?
I'll tell you why it is tough.
Okay.
Because of the burden you experience when you have to be the first. Everyone is okay to respond or act, but be the first to act and the fastest to respond. The two qualifying adjectives. First to act. Suppose you remove that. Please act and respond. Suppose that was the behavior. Nobody will ask you one clarifying question. The reason why there is a clarifying question we asked is you are saying be the first to act and fastest to respond. What are the meanings of this? The first meaning is that generally people who expect something from you, they de-risk themselves by saying the same thing to 13 others. So the reason is that they don't know which one of them will do what they want. So they say it to everybody. At that time, you have the opportunity of the first to respond, first to act, because then you will take the ball and run with it. Sometimes
But sir, in an organization of this nature, are those options available? I mean,
it is available depending on the proactivity, but that is where the don't comes.
okay.
If you are, however, not the natural player, not the capable player, and doesn't have the full energy and bandwidth to complete the loop, don't be the first to act. In fact, pass on the ball. Give it to somebody else who can act with it. But let the other person know, here are the reasons why I didn't act, but I let somebody else act. So these are some of the nuances you have to build to that behavior. Otherwise, if everybody wants to be the first to act, also there is a challenge. It has to be, this accountability is yours. You have the skills and capability to deliver on it. You have also the bandwidth to deliver on it. Then you be the first to respond. But one of the reasons why we kind of dial up that is that very often when a action request is thrown at a general group of people, everyone is looking at everyone.
I just want to read out the definition so that we know.
And everyone is saying, no, what you should please understand one thing.
So this is
Don't
about-
put the burden on me. There is a lot of work that has happened. You must read all that and dovetail and integrate what I am saying into them in only those parts which make sense. Otherwise, I'm not. You remember the famous thing about Christ went to Mount Sinai and said the gospel. I'm not telling the gospel. I'm not the final authority on this. I'm one of the many players. There is some. What have you read? Tell
It
me.
says have a sense of urgency in the way we think, act, and communicate. Create simple plans, processes, and take ownership of their timely execution.
Yeah. So this is the be the first to act and fastest to respond if you want to behave. That first thing is that very quickly understand what is requested of you. Very quickly assess how much of it you can deliver. And what is natural for you to deliver and what is naturally expected of your role. Be the first to act on it. Don't wait for instructions or don't wait for something to reach you. Just take the initiative and act on it.
And how is that different from the last point you mentioned in reach out to understand? Because you said then you have to define action and deliver action. And
That could be slow. This is about speed.
okay.
This whole thing is about speed.
Okay.
You see that? That could be over time.
Okay.
This could be immediate.
All right.
So
Okay.
fastest to respond is again very kind of understood. So this is a relative assessment. This is one of the way or reasons why this is kind of stated the way it is stated is to dial up this sense of urgency.
And how do you
The whole
distinguish?
thing of dynamism, which is
Whole
one of
thing
the
of
values. And
But how do you distinguish a hurried response from a fast response?
Correct. Very good. Good question. So therefore, that's why. Therefore, you have to have a considerate response. So as I said, you have to be the natural pair. You should have the abilities. You should have bandwidth. Then your response will not be hurried. Okay. Then because you are the expert in that subject matter. Right now, there was a meeting with 6 people on a subject of data integrity communication. One was an auditor. Another was a McKinsey consultant. A third one was an operations manager. A fourth one was an HR manager. The fifth one was a quality manager. Now, as it happens, the one who picked up the ball, because he's a proactive quality manager, was the quality. The subject was his. Quality is where data integrity issues play out. So he picked up the ball, and among all others, everybody gave responses to my problem. But this man said, well, I will set up the meeting and I will take 3 weeks, and in 3 weeks' time I will come back. Here is the reason, because I'm losing 1 week for this travel. I will consult so and so. I'll give you a multi-quarter plan, integrated plan for handling this. This is what he said. I go back from that meeting with a feeling, here is a man who was the first to respond and act and fastest to respond. Why? Because I saw that this is Mahesh Kulkarni, and true to his reputation, he did that. There are others in the same meeting who won't do that. And sometimes there are others who would do hurried response, but they have no aukat in that subject. They don't know anything. Why would I trust them? Because they are just showing enthusiasm. I don't trust them to deliver that. So that happens. Deciphering this to any further great detail is not possible, because it's in itself pretty obvious as to what we need to do.
So one thing is, the person, if he has to act upon something, he has to have the subject matter expertise, or just don't commit, right? As you said.
Or I think he has
just
to be,
delegate
he has
somebody
to,
else.
he has to have control over both components. You can't be first to act and then not be capable of responding fast.
Yeah, precisely. He has to, that's a very good analysis.
Yes.
He has to be both. You have to be both. And in fact, you should be first to act only when you know you can be
Be
fast
fastest
enough
to
to
respond.
respond.
Yes, right.
From a
Otherwise,
team perspective, if someone is capable of doing it within the team, I think then as a team initiative, this could be taken, right? The leader can be the first to act on it, and then he can actually,
pass on the
delegate
ball to
somebody
others.
to,
Yeah.
Right.
But also clarify that being first and being fastest are distinguishing behaviors that will call you out from among a crowd. For fear of not able to live up to that, don't lose the opportunity of being the first to act, because then you will not be dynamic.
Yeah.
You call out that, good people who behave in this manner are not people who are afraid of being the first to act or being called out to be fast. They bring their energies, their focus, they prioritize their time, the responses in a manner that they can actually respond.
Is there also an element of challenging oneself, challenging the self in this?
Yeah. The stretch, the challenge, you're right. The stretch, the challenge, they prioritize, constantly prioritize, reprioritize, and things like that. So, yes, you should bring those elements.
Right, sir. I think we should move to the third one.
Simplify. This is here again the do's and don't framework works very well. One of the big problems of simplification is that your mind goes to, in some sense, what should others do to simplify? the mind doesn't go, what will you do to simplify something? Anybody you ask simplify, he will tell you, he should do this, they should do this process should change, that system should change, then things will become simplified. The interesting thing is simplification, like other things, is in you. You know, can you do to simplify both your what you say, what you do, what processes you use, and all that. That's one.
Just
Second
just
is-
one interjection, Ranjit. I hope you have a printout of your boarding card.
No,
Is it
but
quarter
I-
to 7? Then you have to
I'll
leave.
get a printer.
No, so if he can
I've
get a
already
printout of the
checked it.
boarding card, then
No.
there's no
Have a
problem.
printout.
Then half an hour is also fine.
No, it is not fine. It is not. It is risky, and going is more important than listening. I'm telling you this. So my view is we should do it on phone. Send
No,
it
sir.
out.
I mean, I'd like you to at least touch upon all of this and maybe greater detail we can, because you're in a flow, and I don't want to. Yeah.
You don't know me. I can
Okay.
be in a flow in a second.
Okay.
The problem I have is to control myself from speaking.
Okay.
I'm an incorrigible speaker.
Right,
And
I can
you
identify
wake
with that.
me up
Yeah, yeah,
in the
huh?
night, I will speak exactly like this. This is the problem, and lot of people working with me are suffering because of that. Because I keep on speaking. So I want to learn. I tell you, it is. I also will give some deep thought to this.
Right.
There is no hurry. This is something which we should respond.
No, I
but
think
not in a
I
hurry.
think we still have a little bit more time because my flight is at 8:30. So I think 7th.
You should leave at 6:30.
No, but from
Yeah,
what I
it's
remember,
already
yours
quarter
is
to
at
7, my
9:25.
friend.
It's quarter
See
to
that?
7.
Yeah.
Yours is at 9:25.
I'll take the burden of the guilt from you. I want to go.
Okay.
Okay, so if you are not going, I want to go because my sister-in-law has come.
Wow.
And sister-in-law is more important than wife.
Right.
So I must go.
Right,
Okay?
sir. Uh-huh. Okay.
So we'll do a call.
Yeah, we'll do
Right,
it.
sir. I mean,
No,
we'll-
I know,
we'll-
I don't want you to miss the flight.
All right.
Okay. Don't feel bad.
What did
No,
you
no,
do?
no. It's fine.
What did you do there?
I was the fastest to respond.
All right.
What I did is I was unmindful of some place and then.
Okay, you missed a step?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, we will talk about these things.
This was wonderful.